that this will be made available to others who may not be able to attend. And what I'd like to do is just introduce Jim Keegan, who's the president of NAFTD and also the director at the Illinois Fire Service Institute. Jim, any comments before we welcome Shawn to the presenters screen?
Thanks everybody for being here. Like many of you, I've been looking forward to this presentation by Shawn. His presentation at the NAFTD meeting was excellent, and this is a hot ticket item for us also, like it is for many of you, trying to figure out how to work smarter, not harder. And thanks all, both from the NAFTD group and all of our guests today.
All right. And so I'd like to welcome Shawn McKerry, who I mentioned to you is the Provincial Director of Training for the province of Alberta. And he is the Director of the Fire and Emergency Services Training Center at Lakeland College. And Shawn, welcome. I'll let you provide any other comments for self-introduction. And I've given you permission to share. So you should have the ability to bring up your slides, Shawn. So the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ken. Good morning, Jim. Good morning, everyone that's able to attend. I really do appreciate the time, and it's fantastic. I see we've got an audience of about 40 people on the line. I was able to invite some of my team on here too, so they're quietly listening in the back, and they'll hopefully critique me afterwards. It'll be a lot of fun. And yeah, really excited. As Ken said, he was crazy enough to let me talk at NAFTD and throw some of this information out. And then I was actually, after that, able to present at NAFTD a very similar presentation, kind of just built off some of the points that I made at NAFTD. And it's been interesting to see, it definitely saw it at NAFTD and at IFSAC, how fast the conversation changed about AI. Sorry? Or how fast the conversation and how fast people's minds changed on the use and utility of AI. And it's awesome. Like I'm using it daily. So I hope to give some tips and tricks and kind of applications and different things throughout. Maybe before I start, one of the biggest pieces of useful information or utility I use is ChatGPT for a lot of it. And before I take over and I share the screen, I'll ask ChatGPT just so you guys see the conversation that you can have with ChatGPT on your phone. And we can do a little bit of work with that, just to give you an idea before we get into the presentation here. So good morning, ChatGPT. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm ChatGPT, a conversational AI created by OpenAI. I'm here to help with all sorts of things, from answering questions to brainstorming ideas and even supporting training and educational efforts. I'm excited to be here and to show you a little bit about what I can do.
Awesome. Can you give us some extra information on how you might be able to be applied for fire service training directors or accredited agencies? Like you said, we're talking to the North American Fire Training Directors this morning. Give us an additional tips and tricks.
Absolutely. For fire service training directors, I can assist in a number of ways. For example, I can help develop and refine training scenarios, provide quick access to best practices and standards, and even assist with organizing and streamlining documentation. I'm also great at brainstorming new ideas for training exercises and helping with the overall learning process. It's really all about making your work more efficient and effective.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I'm really glad I could help, and I hope your presentation goes amazingly well. If you need anything else at all, just let me know. Good luck and have a great time with the North American Fire Training Directors.
Cool. All right. So hopefully if you haven't seen conversational AI in that capacity, that might have just opened up some eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and start to share my screen, and I'm going to pull up my presentation, and then we can walk through it here. Come on. There we go. Perfect. Okay. It's up there. All right. So I don't know once I start to present here if I'm going to be able to see anybody, but please yell and scream at me. You guys can all see the presentation correctly?
Yes, we do.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Ken. So So, AI, whether you believe me or not, AI has actually been around since the 1950s. So it's been around a long time, but it's really become household conversation in probably the last 2 years. But they've been starting to produce AI for a long, long time. And if you've been using autocorrect or if you've been using spell check on your computer, you've already been using AI. There's been some amazing inventions over the years. Of course, I always like to joke that the Roomba, as they clean your house, that technically is AI. And it's been vacuuming up floors for quite a few years now. There was also the invention of being able to play chess on the computer against the chess champions of the world, where the AI has either been able to beat the chess champions. There was also that IBM experiment when they went against the elite. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but went against that elite Jeopardy champion, and the AI again was able to beat the Jeopardy champion at the end. And there is an AI test out there that they've been able to take these tools and they get essentially 10 people to sit down in a room and they use the AI tool. And up until only a few months ago, the majority of people could always figure out that the AI tool was an AI tool. So it was failing this test. But just, I believe it's in the last 60 days, the AI tools that are out there now have been able to pass that test. So they've been able to perform so well and mirror or act like a human that people can't tell that AI is being used against them in these kind of challenges, which is pretty impressive. That's a big feat. That's also kind of scary in another way, but pretty impressive. But we've been using AI for a long time. We just haven't formalized it. So when institutions start to panic or government agencies start to panic about AI, of course, there's generative AI, which we're going to get into, but we've already been using it for a very, very long time in a lot of different ways. And with Copilot and Microsoft being entities like being buried into Microsoft 365, which probably most of us are using, it's going to be forced upon you whether you like it or not to that degree. And I was told once in a conference that if you're going to fall behind if you're not using it. And there's always been this fear as well, is AI going to replace people? And I think it was said at this conference that AI is not going to replace people, or it might replace people, but it's not going to replace the people that are using it. Because now you've just been supercharged and you can do a lot more work faster and better by employing the tool with you than what you could do in the traditional fashion. Here at Lakeland, we've been able to revamp courses and content in probably 10% of the time as it would have been having to do it in a traditional fashion. So we're quite happy with it. And like I said, I use it all the time. Oops, ignore that one. That was for the original presentation, but today I would just want to use it live. So practical applications, as ChatGPT itself said, you can use it in scenario creation. You can use it to make you test questions or help find references or employ it in a million different ways. Like you said, we have it creating course outlines. I've had deep conversations with it about developing new programs and helping us build the curriculum maps. All sorts of stuff, editing documents. I think we can use it in a variety of different ways. I think you're really just limited to your level of creativity and if you get in and start to employ these tools, they're going to start to stack up and you realize how cool they can, or the utility you can have with them. So we can really digitize ourselves to a degree, and hopefully this picture is here for you. One of the other practical applications, and I'll just be upfront with everybody, is when I originally made this presentation for Lakeland College as part of our faculty development days, I asked AI, I need to make a presentation on AI and the utility of it. What would a PowerPoint look like for me? And it laid out the top 10 slides, let's say. These are what we suggest you talk on. And then I had it go ahead and make all these pictures. So in an hour, I had the presentation done. I took a long time developing some of these pictures to make sure they looked and felt right at the time. But even the picture generation, when I made this probably about a year ago now, has come so much further and is better that it wouldn't take that long nowadays. But everything you see here was made by AI in a matter of seconds, kind of thing. So there's a few different styles of AI tools, and some of them, because AI is advancing so fast, some of them are combining themselves. So there's a couple different themes here of AI tools. But when you look at ChatGPT and Google Bard and a couple others, they've really started to bring them together. So you can do all in one, which is nice for a user. But I'll give you the idea and hopefully I guess we can lay out these themes. So conversational AI is something you're going to text to or talk to, as I just demonstrated, of course, through my phone. That's you have a back and forth conversation with it, and then ultimately asking it to produce whatever product you need or write up something or things like that. So that's going to be your traditional chat GPT, like you said, the Google Bard, those that are giving you a text or a voice answer, if that makes sense. That's what conversational AI is. And again, when I asked ChatGPT to make this photo, I just said, let's sit in a park. Let's sit me in a busy park, or sit a person in a busy park having a conversation with an AI figure. And this is how it represented that. And it did a fantastic job of it. I don't know if Greg Palmer's on, but I always like to take a shot at Greg. It was at IFSAC, it was quite funny. But image to text, this is probably how most of us might be asked to draw something on the left-hand side. I don't have crazy artistic ability. Usually if I want to do something in a presentation, it would have ended up something like on the left, would have been super simple, as compared to what you can do on the right. And to make this graphic, again, took me a few minutes to write into ChatGPT to ask it to make this image. Whereas, a few months ago or a year ago, I would have had to explain this image to a graphic designer, get them to start working on it, probably send me a few different copies of it. We'd have to refine it, and probably if you were an aggressive graphic designer or had those resources to you in your institution, you might have it in a week. You might have it in a couple weeks, or even longer. It might take a considerable amount of time to land on this. Again, this took me all of 20 seconds and probably had to do it 3 or 4 different times. So I think if you need, you just type in your text box, you ask it for the picture, it produces the picture. I'll give you some more examples as we go through this morning, but really awesome. You can dream it and do it up almost instantly. And so adding this type of material to advertising, course content, websites, whatever it might be, social media posts, I can create an image that will work really, really well, really, really fast. And especially in a very fluid environment in today's world, like if you're dealing with social media and websites, people don't spend a lot of time on those. So you don't need to spend a ton of time trying to make the absolute perfect graphic. Let's say they're going to see it for 10 seconds and move on. It's just that super impactful picture, and then we're carrying on. There's text to video, which is very impressive as well now, and it keeps getting better and better and better. ChatGPT just upgraded a lot of their video production assets, or the logic behind it, over the last few months, and it's getting more and more impressive. I'm really curious how this is going to impact like the world of Hollywood as you move forward, because again, I can make a digital video very quickly and work really well, which would have had to take probably months and hours of time to develop and hours of video content to get you a 30-second video clip. Whereas I can now type it into a computer and it will pump it out in a few minutes and you're off running. You go back and modify it a few different times. But it's blown apart what was needed and the assets and the amount of time you needed to make a video, so we can make something very quickly. I'm hoping this might actually work while I've got you guys online. Is if it doesn't work, I would encourage you to go look at it. There is and this has been around for about a year now, the Ukrainian government has actually created an AI person, and she's the official spokesperson of the government. So when they need to deliver their messaging, they essentially have it written up, they put it into their system. This AI person presents it really well. They don't do the ohs and ums. They can express themselves, so it feels quite natural. There's deflection and different things in their voice and their tone, and it's quite impressive. And you kind of buy into it, and you get this sense of comfort, of course, in the messages they're delivering, because it seems very human-like, and it will read exactly what you said, so it won't screw it up. which is nice. So you don't have to go back and do 15 different takes on somebody trying to read a script anymore. So there's a bunch of other utilities now with AI that you can create these AI figures. They'll read exactly what you want. And again, create that video you can bring out and put into e-learning content or do as part of a safety presentation or whatever it might be, is we can be employing that sort of stuff. So if you get a second, go on YouTube and just put in AI spokesperson or AI spokesperson Ukraine, and you'll find lots of videos on this person there that they've created, and it's quite impressive. And again, that's probably at least a year old technology when they rolled that out Now, ethics are always a great question when it comes into AI and the idea of bias and things, because AI is ultimately programmed by some developer on the back end. So we know that there can be bias built into that programming, whether it be intentional or unintentional. We have to be mindful of that. We also, I think a lot of universities and colleges are also struggling how we cite AI. Obviously, if the AI is using someone else's material, you want it, or you want to ask it to cite those people and give that author credit in their work. But if AI is ultimately generating stuff from all over the place and pulling it all together, how do we cite AI? And I don't know if there's a good solution for this or a good, refined answer. I think that we struggle with that a lot right now, is how do we disclose that we're using AI or not, or like how do we give credit for people's work? Because AI can be taking 1% of information from 1,000 different places and putting it all together to come up with things. So it's almost impossible to do it. One of the things that we said at Lakeland College right away when our IT director came in and started to explain to us what AI was and what ChatGPT was, he immediately put out this great perspective, and he said, this is the calculator that educational institutions freaked out when the calculator came in and said, well, now all the students are going to have the answers. This is cheating. And he said, so what education had to do was shift. They had to say, cool, we know you can get the answer, but how did you actually get the answer? Show us the work on how you got the answer. So we had to more focus on how they were getting there and getting them to prove how they were getting there rather than just the end answer. And I think that approach needs to be taken into education as well. And it made sense to me when they pitched that to us, is great end paper, but I want to see the critical thinking and the tools that you used with AI to make this paper. Show us that work. Show us those conversations. I was able to produce a proposal for the Alberta government on an proposed Indigenous firefighter training program. I probably spent 4 hours in the car driving, having a conversation like I did with ChatGPT this morning, talking about this program and plan and all these different obstacles and different things that I saw happening with this. And then at the end, I actually had it ask me a bunch of questions, and we'll get into that with some tactics later on. But we produced this really brilliant proposal, and I could have simply told the province, cool, here's an AI proposal on Indigenous firefighting. But if we went back and saw that whole critical conversation or critical thinking embedded in that conversation to get that final proposal, it would have been pretty impressive. No one probably would have read it, but you could see that you'd invested the time to get that amazing product at the end. So at the college here, we believe, we're trying to prepare people for the real world. And my attitude right now is that I'm using AI almost every moment, like every hour, at least a few times every hour while I'm here. And if I'm using it in my role, and we expect these students to go out and play similar roles in other organizations, we should be encouraging them to use it, because as soon as they leave here, they're going to use it. And if we try to control it, like our IT director said, if we control it and lock it down and not give students access to it at the college, they're just going to use it when they get home. Like, they're going to go and do their homework and they're going to employ it. And so we're not going to be able to control it. So we might as well get on board with this right now and just start using it and employing it to make even better stuff. There is a lot of interesting conversation about the power and water and energy that's being tied and being used up to power the servers and computers that AI is having to use to run itself. So I know there is some conversation happening around that on almost that environmental impact of AI. And I hope, again, with more infrastructure and things getting smarter, that we can become even more efficient in that. And ChatGPT or a group called DeepSeek, which I'll highlight a little bit later. When they came out, that was their big promotion, is that they were using a substantial amount less, or a much less amount of environmental impact or water and heat and all of this stuff on their servers as compared to the traditional, well, I guess not traditional, but compared to ChatGPT. So I know there's some of that conversation going on as well, but if I'm using it to do my job and doing great things, I expect others to be doing it as well. And I think many of our team have embraced the utility of AI, and even some of those people that have, put their back up right away and said, no, I don't like this. They started to employ it, and now they're power users on our side. With ChatGPT, and especially in the college and university setting, and even in our professional roles, is if you get crap in, you get crap out on the left-hand side. If you spend the time and invest the effort, you can produce something which is really, really great on the right-hand side. So I can notice that with students and people that are using it in a lazy fashion. There's some indicators that you can pick up right away that it's AI. And it just kind of looks like garbage to me. And it's exactly that representation what's shown on the left side. But the people that are using it and really making the utility, like exercising the utility of the platform they're using, giving it lots of really great material to use, you can produce some really great stuff on the right side. It does take some time to have that conversation with AI, but then you'll get a really nice polished product at the end of it that represents you and your organizations really, really well, I believe. So now to kind of get there, here's some tips that I have when you go to crafting those really great prompts, or as you continue to use AI. Is one of the biggest pieces is when you start to have that conversation with AI, whether it be through voice or whether it be through text or through your desktop, like typing in, is tell it the role you need it to play. So you go into ChatGPT and it's like, hey, I need you to be a data analyst today. I'm going to give you a bunch of data. And I need you to look at it critically, and we're going to work our way through it, and we're going to come up with some trends or whatever it is at the end. You need to tell it what role. So, or if you need it to be an executive assistant for you today, or you need it to be an instructional designer, or you need it to be a test expert, whatever it be, if you can help narrow down its focus, it can do better stuff for you. Because right now, if it comes in without any of that sense of direction, it accesses as much information as possible. But if you can narrow that down right away, that's really, really helpful. So give it a role. Tell it what you want it to do for you that day. And then build that content with it. If we can give it as much information as we can, the better it's going to produce that end result. So if you can give it your organizational information or your vision or ideas or additional content, and give it additional documents to support that whole piece, it can utilize all of that to get you a better, more custom solution, or whatever the end goal is with you. It better output at the end. So the more you can fill the room up with information, the better it's going to be. Is like this representation is just overwhelm it with information if you can. And one of the pieces I've been able to take advantage is don't tell it what to do until the very end. Build up everything in that room, paint the entire room for AI, and then ask it, okay, now I need a letter on this. I was having a conversation with it one morning and on my way into work, and I just explained this really cool initiative that we were working on, and it's to deal with dangerous goods training, and explained all this and explained these projects that are happening at the federal government level and some interaction we were doing, and gave it this whole, I probably had, I don't know, half an hour of conversation with AI at the end. And then finally I said, okay, now I want you to make me a letter for the Minister of Environmental or Environment in Canada, explaining all this and the utility of our facility and encouraging them to come out on a tour. And it had all of this information. It produced this brilliant letter at the end. I had to change like 3 words, sent it up to the president's office and said, here, can you please send this to the minister on our behalf? And their comments were right away like, this is an awesome letter. Again, I didn't tell them that AI made it, but if I did, I would have went back and said, hey, well, look at this huge conversation I had to get there. And they were just thoroughly impressed with it. But definitely produced a polished piece because we was able to paint that whole room and fill that whole room with furniture before asking it to get done. The next tip I would have, I think my numbers are out of whack here, but anyways, the next tip I would have is if you're in a discussion with AI, have it ask you questions. So this morning, again, the same thing, having a conversation on it, the drive out to the college here. I have about an hour and 45-minute commute at the start of the week and the end of the week. So I have a lot of time to talk, which kills a lot of the road trip time. But we're talking about a subject and I said, cool, now ask me 10 more questions on this. That will help you fill that room with content. So if you can't think of it, or think about what else to ask it, just employ it against itself. And so, yeah, give me 10 questions about this topic that you think would be really useful to better make sure you're prepared to do the next step. And ChatGPT will be happy to give you 10 more questions that you get back to it on. The trick with conversation, when you have a conversation with it on your phone, is you might have to clarify, is ask me one of these questions at a time. So you can still have that conversation back and forth, but you still get all the 10 questions because sometimes it'll lay all 10 questions out real fast, and then you forget what question one was. So you just cut them off, tell them, hey, let's start at question one. Let's go one by one, and let's go through all these questions. And then at the end, it helped fill the room with more furniture and more content that then you can ask it to do the job afterwards. The other one is AI doesn't have feelings. And I kind of preface that and say it doesn't have feelings yet. So I don't want to say go be mean to it or threaten it or different things because who knows where AI is going to go. And I don't want to have it in my bad books or me in its bad books later on in life. But uh, you can be straight up with it. Like, hey, that's not very good. Let's do another rendition of that or do another variation or I don't like the tone of that. You can ask it to do those jobs a dozen times. It doesn't get offended for it. And you don't have to worry about dealing with an emotional person or a person that's really critical about analytics or whatever their passions are. AI is just ultimately there to help you. So you don't have to worry about maybe how you frame it up as well. I tend to, when I talk to it, routinely say please and thank you. That's the Canadian part of me with everybody saying thank you for everything. But you can be really straight and to the point with AI. And again, it doesn't have feelings. So it's not going to, take things too critically and go and pout or be mad at you the rest of the day. You don't have to worry about that. So maybe you don't have to use all your emotional intelligence skills when you're dealing with AI. You can just get after it with it. The other tip that I've always had is sometimes you get in too deep with AI, is the conversation you had is ultimately maybe too long and you've given it things that might not apply anymore. And at the end product you're actually producing isn't that good because it's now kind of focusing on too many things or the room is too filled with stuff that might not be exactly up to date on what you need it to do now in this point in the conversation. So you go back and just start over. That one picture at the very start to show the evolution of monkey to AI, uh, I was getting so frustrated with the AI trying to make that picture and trying to describe what I wanted, and the AI figure at the end wasn't what I'd hoped. And I probably had it produce 30 or 35 different photos of this. And each time I asked it to adjust it and adjust it and adjust it, we kept going further off the rails. I said, I just need to restart this conversation, started with a new one, adjusted my original prompts, and then ultimately within a picture or two, I had exactly what I was hoping for. So don't be afraid to take those conversations or that content or whatever it is and chuck it in the garbage and start over. It might be painful that you were able to invest still that time at the start, but it might be still quicker to go in the end. The other thing I've been able to do is go to some of those conversations you've had, ask ChatGPT to summarize that conversation with all the big points, and that even tell them that I'm going to take this now and I need to put it into another conversation and have this. So I need almost like a briefing note, produce a briefing note for another conversation on all the stuff we've talked about. So I already have a great starting point in that next or starting point in that next conversation. And that's been quite successful as well. The other one is use AI against itself. And we kind of talked about that briefly a little bit or a little while ago, was have ChatGPT make you the prompts. And almost like I said with that briefing note just a moment ago, was ask it, say, I need to make a photo on this. I'm going to use another tool to make this photo, but can you help me craft that prompt? right? How should I describe this photo? Or if you give it a picture of something and say, okay, I want to recreate this photo, give me a prompt to get this type of picture produced. And it will do that for you. And especially if you get into start making your own chat GPTs, which we'll get into in another minute, is you use chat GPT to help you make that material or that code or whatever it is to craft that other entity at the end. So have it, you employ it against itself and compound it, is that you'll be able to take work from ChatGPT, cut and paste it into Ideogram or another tool, and it works out really, really well. When it comes to ChatGPT, you're able to make custom GPTs, and this is where I think there's a tremendous amount of utility in what I've been in, how I think I've been very successful in using AI is being able to make some of these custom GPTs. And if you're not familiar with a custom GPT, it's a feature that I've only been able to find within the ChatGPT system. As far as I know, Google Bard does not have this ability, and a few other ones. And when I was trying both ChatGPT and Google Bard at the same time, I was drawn back to ChatGPT because you can make a custom platform for yourself to use where you can't really do that anywhere else yet, or at least that I've discovered yet. So what we can do is that we can have it know our entire world, and we can build this awesome foundation in ChatGPT that every time I have a conversation with it, it already has this great starting block. If you're just using ChatGPT without any GPTs and you've got the paid version, is it already, if you can go into the settings and you can turn this feature on or off, but it's just called like the memory settings. So when you say something of substance or what AI or ChatGPT believes is substance, it will remember it. So it'll remember your name. If you talked about, you have 2 kids or your job or whatever it is, it's taking those things and it's putting it into its own database to remember a little bit more about yourself. So it can give you a custom answer for you. You can turn that on or off if you don't like that. And you can also go in and see what it remembers, and you can actually go back to those conversations and change that in case it did capture something incorrectly. So if you're using it or you don't know about this feature, dive in there and just double check if that's on or off, if you're comfortable with it, and then see what it has noted down in its memory about you. And like you said, and then you can modify things in case it is kind of going off the rails a little bit. But that's ultimately what a custom GPT is that you build this foundational platform that has everything you want it to know. And as soon as I start to say hello, it's already got that stuff there for us to use. So I've built a number of these so far, and I'm using it all the time. I have a Lakeland College one that for me in my role, and the AI has been programmed to know, or ChatGPT has been programmed to know who I am, what my role is. It knows all about our courses and our programs, kind of the vision of the courses and programs. It knows about some really cool things that we're up to and all that. So when I start to employ it, it has all that information, where if you're just using, like I said, the generic chat conversation with AI, it may or may not have that. You might have to bring that content into the room when you're having that discussion, which takes time. But if you invest in building a GPT, then you don't have to do that. You do it once. You might update it every now and again with some new cool things, but you start at that starting block where I can just jump in and start to have a big conversation where the room is already half filled with all that content. So that's exciting. The nice part with ChatGPT and the GPTs you can make is they require absolutely no coding. So you do not have to be an expert in this whatsoever. I don't know enough code or anything to find my way out of a cardboard box. So it's simple. It's just text driven. So, and you can work with ChatGPT to make these. So you can upload all of your documents. So like we're building a brand new academic framework at Lakeland College. So I totally intend to, when we're done, I'm going to take that whole academic framework, drop it in there. So it knows all about our expectations on course outlines and our policies and procedures, and what's expected on courses and all sorts of stuff with our advisory committees. So it's already has that information off the start. Then you get some really great responses, and then it just knows you and it seems more comfortable to use. So the other one that I will be cautious, and I'll share this with everyone, is that if you're using the free version of ChatGPT, it is anything you're giving it, it's using it to build its own foundation information and its background that's going to be accessible to everyone in the world, kind of thing. If you're in the paid version, on the bottom of all the conversations, it does say that any of the conversation and content that's shared with ChatGPT is not used to build its learning or for its database. It's not there to be learned from. So it's telling us that it's not using our information and sharing it throughout the world. However, I'll be mindful that we also were told by Apple that Apple's, Siri, and it's probably be quiet because it probably is listening right now, is that it's not listening. But in recent, number of weeks ago or weeks, they had come out and they've had to pay lawsuits because it ultimately was listening. So I take ChatGPT's promise at the bottom kind of with a bit of grain of salt, because it still might be learning from it, kind of like in that Apple situation. So again, anything from the college's perspective, we're not putting super sensitive information on there. Like, we're not putting students' names and any privacy information. We're leaving stuff that's ultimately kind of public domain anyways, or public stuff, and using it in there. So it's not going to make or break anything at the end of the day. So just be mindful of that. If you do have the free version, it can probably do a lot of what you need, but it definitely says that they are learning from it as compared to the full version. So here's a quick snapshot of custom GPTs that I've made here. So for example, the one that I said is built custom for me is this Lakeland advisor. So that, again, knows exactly who I am. It knows how it can work for me. And what I was finding is that I was employing this every day. All my conversations, 99% of my conversations happen in that chat GPT box. And as I watched people around our organization use ChatGPT, I quickly found out, like, the results I was getting, I thought were greater than everybody else's was getting. And then it really dawned on me that I'm getting better results because I've given it this background in this. I'm using my AI or this GPT. So then what I ultimately did was click on these three arrows, I copied it, or three dots, I copied it and created the ETC advisor. I realized that, not intentionally, but I was actually gatekeeping this really great tool from my team. So I'm going, crap, I need to give everybody else the access to this so they'll get that slight advantage that I'm able to exploit. So we copied that. We changed some of the parameters so it knew it wasn't working for me, it was working for the team now. And then we made the ETC advisor. So this is accessible to anybody on my team here at the college. And I push them to use this as well because it's got that background kind of already built into it. We've also built an exercise design engine. This is for creating emergency, like disaster type tabletop scenarios. So it's got all of the documentation that talk about creating really good designs. It knows everything about ICS. All sorts of good stuff and content we've been able to find on the internet. We've been able to dump it in here, so it's got that base knowledge. So now I can say, hey, go and make me a wildfire disaster for the town of Vermilion, X, Y, and Z, whatever it might be, and we're already off to the races with there because it's got that foundational knowledge. So it's a lot of fun if you get exploring in here. Here's a quick screenshot of just a conversation again you have with AI. I think the presentation at the start, having that conversation was a little bit more elaborate, but you start with your post, it gives you the reply, and then you start talking. And this was very much, this was a conversation I had on the drive home. So this was actually a verbal conversation through my phone, but it gets documented, of course, in the chat. So I can always come back to it. And I just said, hey, it's been a little while since we did a good LinkedIn post. And I want to do a LinkedIn post, but I have no idea what to talk about. And then its response was like, hey, well, how about we highlight some recent successes or new partnerships or some insight and emergency preparedness? What's on your mind? And I'm going, oh, crap, it triggered that right away. I'm like, oh, well, we just kind of formally changed around one of our computer labs in an emergency operations center for us. We should talk about that. Let's do that. So our emergency management lab, I had a quick I described what we were doing and what's been done. And then ultimately it made me the social media post from that. I was able to, when I got home, cut, paste it, put a picture in, and we were done. And it was actually probably one of our most successful posts on LinkedIn for the level of engagement. And again, that was a 10-minute conversation. And when I stopped at home, it took me 2 seconds to load it up with the picture and we were done. So I also find I have these conversations a lot, even walking from the college to the emergency training center. I had ChatGPT make me a briefing note for the president the other day on an exercise that we were able to do. And I was just had that conversation as I walked the 10-minute walk across. And by the time I got back to my desk, it was done. I changed a couple little things and blasted it right back to the president of the college, and everybody was thrilled with it and going perfect. So we've kind of highlighted this at the start. It's just having that conversation. It's just simply you can talk to it now. And if you've got downtime, or like you said, you're walking or driving, it's a lot of fun. The crew from Alabama caught me at IFSAC after I brought this concept up at NAFTD, and they said we were excited. We got in the car, and on the way home, we just chatted with it, and it was such a cool experience. And they got bought into it right away. So I watched a video the other day by a gentleman named Gary Vaynerchuk, and he said, if you don't have ChatGPT on your phone and you're not using it like this, what the are you doing? Like, get it on your phone and get using it that way. So I'm glad I was ahead of that. But it's super easy. Once you get comfortable having that conversation, you can get a lot of stuff done in a pretty quick way. When it comes to building a ChatGPT, it's super simple. Go into the ChatGPT in the top right corner. In the top left corner, you can see a box that says Explore GPTs. I can demo this in a few minutes, but Explore GPTs, you go to create, and it lays out how to fill in the blanks kind of thing and upload your documents. And it works really, really slick. So you can build one in a very simple way. And again, it's not one and done. You can always go back and edit it. So if you find out it's not working in exactly the way you like it, go back and change it up, or you've got a new document you need to upload to it, go ahead and do that. In our case, when we talked about our programs, I put a document that talked about our programs. I actually had ChatGPT help me make that document in another conversation, and just explaining what our emergency service technology program was, or what our Bachelor of Applied Business and Emergency Services is. And it was able to craft that summary document for me. I PDF'd it and uploaded it in the ChatGPT. So again, compounding it against itself, but you can explore that way. Here's a number of other tools that are out there. Well Said Labs, I'm happy to give a demo of Well Said Labs here in a moment. It's really neat because it's a voice to text editor. So you can write in a script, you can put it in there, you can choose the voice, you can create it, and within probably 30 seconds, you have a script already written and done, and it's read exactly how you wrote it. And instead of having to pay for somebody to do a voiceover and waiting for that week for it to come back, and then you don't like it and you got to send it back again, you have these things done in seconds. So we've got an update video that we did, and we used this tool. At that time, it sounded fairly natural. There's a few different words you can pick up on. You're like, nah, that didn't sound ultimately like the best it could have. But really, we realized it was a 3-minute video. People are probably going to watch it once. They might even watch the whole thing. So why am I trying to spend thousands of dollars on making it perfect when it's only going to be kind of used in that application? Notebook LM is a really cool one. You can upload a bunch of information to it, and it will create you a podcast. And I believe I have one in the presentation here in a minute that we did for IFSAC. But it's really neat because it creates a male voice and a female voice, and they have this really kind of fluid podcast, but it's been created completely by AI. So we're actually seeing students and people take their content from a course, upload it into Notebook LM, and instead of having to read this paper, it could be, for example, I think of Jim in your guys' institution and the research you guys are doing. You could take a research paper, put it into Notebook LM, and it will make you a podcast on that research paper. That instead of now me actually reading that research paper, I can listen to the podcast as I'm headed out for a walk or on the drive home, whatever it is. And it takes that and does it in such a great way. And I don't know where that's going to go either. I could see visualizations coming into that in the future, and more like really immersive stuff coming out of there. And Google, this is a Google tool, is when Google put this out, I'm going, wow, that's a game changer. One of my instructors came in and said, have you seen this? We got to be using this. I'm going, this is really neat. Claude is another big name tool when it comes to text conversational AI. Ideogram is another one that we use a lot to create some of the pictures that we have. Canva helps people with advertising. Gemini and DeepSeek are the biggest competitors to ChatGPT. The one I would caution on DeepSeek, I have not played with DeepSeek, and I haven't yet. DeepSeek is owned by a Chinese company, and just from relations in North America and China and sensitivity and different things like that. I haven't played with that. Just again, I'm nervous about uploading information or too much to it and maybe how it's being used on the back end. So I haven't done that, but I know our IT director has used DeepSeek and he was quite impressed with it. But as we talked to at the very start too, Microsoft Copilot is going to be embedded into Microsoft 365 moving forward. So you're going to be forced to use it at the end. So whether institutions or governments fighting against this, you're going to have to shift. We talked about compounding AI, so using one of these tools against the other. Here's the Well Said Lab piece that I'll show you. So all of the, it's not playing. Okay. Let's see. No, it won't. Might be able to pull that up after, but like I said, the voiceovers were all done there. This is a podcast that was created that I asked for the IFSAC spring meetings for Notebook LM to make this podcast. And I said, here, ultimately, this is what IFSAC is. Here's the website. I want you to make a podcast on IFSAC and what it is. So just be mindful when it does create this, it kind of makes IFSAC sound a little funky, and there's a little few things that aren't totally correct, but it's ultimately just to show you the demonstration on what it's doing and how this was created in about 4 minutes time. And I didn't need people to record on a microphone and for us to do it a dozen times, but just as the demonstration here. Hopefully you guys can hear that. Just confirm.
No, not hearing it.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. I wonder if it's just the audio is not hooked up. I can send you the link to that one afterwards just to share that. This is Ideogram, and as we're hosting the North American Fire Training Directors Conference this fall in Edmonton, and this was a lot of fun. And I was talking to Ken and saying, Ken, let's build an advertisement. It's going to be fun. Get people excited to come to Edmonton and to spend the few days with us and come out and tour our facility. But definitely, as we're coming to Canada, I said we should have a theme to this. And as I did this as a joke. And so I said, I went to Ideogram. I said, I need you to make me a really furious Canadian beaver that's a firefighter. And this was the one, all the first 4 pictures on the bottom were the ones it created for me right away. So Ideogram will create me 4 samples of a photo based on what I told it to do. And again, I didn't have to use a graphic designer. This was done in a minute. I'm like, okay, cool. This is great. So then I said, it's not furious enough. Make me a more furious firefighter or firefighting beaver. And it gave me the next 4 on the top. The guy on the left isn't super furious looking. He's kind of cute. But the other ones are a little bit better. So I ultimately sent Ken the one on the far right, and as a joke said, all right, here it is. And I laid over the NAFTD information. And Ken's awesome. Ken's response was fantastic. Like, oh, this is great, but can we get him chewing on a fire tower? And I said, I bet you that should be pretty easy. We could do that. But then ultimately we produced the real ad. But again, this took me 2 minutes of time to produce something as simple as this. And especially if you're looking for complementary images in a PowerPoint, this is super simple to do. We can give you a demo of that. Here's just some things to always try to remember when we're using AI is always confident, but it's not always correct. So you likely have to fact check a number of things with this. I'll give you a really good example. There's a gentleman that works with us routinely. His name is Paul Prevo. He does these podcasts that talk about line of duty deaths. And I think it's just called Emergency Traffic is his podcast, and does a great job with these. But I asked Paul, I said, Paul, are you using AI to for your podcasts, to help script it or to help you find LODDs that you could talk about? And he goes, no, I don't know anything about AI and that. And I said, well, let's do this little exercise right now. Let's jump on. I think I did it on my phone. I said, I've got a friend, he does podcasts on this, painted that picture a little bit. I need you to find me 10 LODD incidents that Paul could feature on his podcast. And it spit me out 10 right away. And I think number 8 or something, it talked about 2 firefighters that died in Alberta and because of I think it was a training, like an acquired structure type burn. And I looked at Paul right away and I'm like, do you remember this? Like, that seems like a very substantial incident. Like, is this for real? And both of us were real puzzled with each other and went back to AI and we're like, hey, can you tell us some more about number 8? Are you sure we've got number 8 correct? And it went back and was like, yeah, oh yeah, this is what happened, blah, 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 and sounded super confident. And then we questioned it a third time and said, are you sure? Like, can you give me the sources on where you found this? And then it came back real quick and was like, oh yeah, sorry, my bad. That really didn't happen. Yeah, you can ignore that one. I'm going, so you still have to fact check a lot of it, ask it to give you its sources and things like that. But so it can sound very confident. Just make sure it's not convincing you of something that is truly incorrect. Always make sure privacy matters when it goes to this. Like you said, whether it's learning from you or not, I'm always very cautious of that. And like the institutions and government, I do have some controls or policies in place by now on what you cannot share. In other words, sources can definitely be invented, like they just highlight from that podcast one. But again, when you get links or things, always exercise and double check the citations and the links that it does give you, because some of them will go to dead websites or of a website that might have existed 5 years ago that it just happens to remember and knew was there, but doesn't actually exist today. So I've had a number of times that those links are broken. The garbage in, garbage out theory. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're still the expert in what's happening and what you need to present to your organization. So make sure you're still vetting that stuff, double checking it, manipulating it a little bit on what you need to do before you do throw it out the door. And that it says institution policies are still evolving. I would go one step further and say AI is evolving at such a rapid pace that it's really, really difficult to stay up with or stay on pace with. Already, I know some of these concepts, like I've been sharing, are already eliminated, or ChatGPT does video and pictures and things that it wasn't able to do that a year ago. And it's been advanced so much in the last 3 or 4 things. So we might have policies that aren't even relevant, or in theory aren't even relevant today because of what the tools can do for us, and how students are employing them. So I'll leave you with that list. It's I'm pretty I guess well done up. I'm glad to share that with everybody after as well. So I will just if we still have exit out here, I'll throw this up on the screen and give people a couple ideas on what's happening here. I drew on my screen somehow. Hopefully we can ignore it. So this is Well Said Labs. So this is the app that I've been using to create voiceovers. So these are all the list of voiceovers on the bottom that we've been using, and we pick the person and the reader and what they say, and you'll see, because it doesn't have feelings, I get it to do these things more than once just to make sure it sounds and flows quite nice. But I'll load up this one right here. So this is what I had it say at the closing of one of our voiceover pieces that I needed. So I chose this voice, and then I can, oh, I guess my audio is not working, but I can put any words in here and hit play or hit create, and it will produce that track in a few seconds and make that audio voiceover. And then I simply download it and drag it into our video editor, and you're good to go. With many of these, if I went into the words here, I actually had ChatGPT make this script, paste it into here, and then had said, create the track. And as it starts to create itself there on the bottom, it should only take, I don't know, another 20 seconds here, and it's done, download it and gone. Like, and our marketing team was sending stuff to Toronto, to a voiceover agency in Toronto, costing them probably thousands of dollars. There it's done. I can download it and I can use it. Simple. Kills a lot of time. And like I said, if you don't like it, I can recreate it in a matter of seconds. This is ChatGPT. So when I said, when we get into GPTs themselves, I'm gonna get rid of that silly thing that I did there. There we go. Okay. ChatGPT, much like your app store, if you're using ChatGPT, it essentially has a GPT store. So I can go in here and I can find a GPT that is maybe already been created by someone that I can employ. So if I need to use the Scholarly GPT is great. Like you said, its foundation is designed and built to find research papers and resources for you to use on your end. So I can quickly click on this ChatGPT, essentially bring it over as an app, and start to have a conversation with it immediately and ask, say, find some research on firefighter cancers or whatever it might be, and it'll get to work for me and be able to pull me all sorts of research. So someone has created that and made it a public-facing ChatGPT. So if you make a really great tool and you want the public to use it, you can make it available this way. Dolly right here is also great at making pictures, but people have done some great stuff and just made them available to the market, let's say. You can then also go ahead and create your own. So back up here, I just got some box. In this create function, this is where you can create your own, where I can go in and see my ChatGPTs. So we built this custom one as a correlation assistant for IFSAC, so I could at least demo it while we were there and how it works. But I can come into here and say, let's look at my Lakeland advisor, have that conversation with it. They also file up on the left-hand side. But in here, we go back to my GPTs. Now I can edit this. Oh, click on the wrong thing. Edit the GPT. So this is what it looks like when you get into an editor. You can have a conversation with it on the left, describing what you want it to do or what you needed to change, and you can do it that way and just do that in a kind of a fluid method. Or you can go into the configure state where you can actually detail a little bit more. So this is the content I put in. It's just how we want the tool to work, how we want this AI to function. And all the parameters on this. I've also said, when creating emails, I don't want the email to start with, I hope this message finds you well. That's a really big sign that someone used an AI tool to write an email. So now this AI knows if anybody asks for on my team to create an email message or to create a letter, it is not allowed to use that because it's an automatic giveaway in my mind. But we've uploaded these documents to it as well to create that foundation. So they're really simple to create. You just start getting in there and playing with it. The other thing that I'll end up doing is I will drag one screen over here, one screen over here, and I'll open up a chat GPT over here. Jump in here, and I will now have a conversation on this side, just saying, hey, I want to start to make a chat GPT that can do X, Y, and Z. And I'll have the conversation on the left. And then as it's giving me information or it's telling me what to put in the instructions, I'm just dragging it across back and forth. And then you can go in and test it. So that was a lot of what happened with when we developed the one for IFSAC, is I had to build a lot and test it a lot, but I had an entire conversation with AI on how to make that tool. I should have had it up and ready. These are the conversations and the tests we were having with AI to make sure this tool was working correctly for us on the correlation sheets. But it was a lot of fun. So you can play with it on the left-hand side, tell it what you want it to do, and then use it to its own advantage on the other side, or compound it. Ideogram is a lot of fun. As I highlighted with the beaver pictures, I joked with my team. We use Teams a lot to send out messages, and I use it as announcements. And I said we had a number of tours coming up at the ETC. I said I want a banner to put on top of this chat or this Microsoft Teams message. But I'm like, a tour could be perceived as a musical thing. So I said, quickly make me an ETC upcoming tour dates banner that I could use. And it did that really quickly just to add a little bit of more, interest amongst the team. I think we ended up using this one on it, but I'll just give you an example of how quick this is. I don't know, create, let's make a cartoon fire hydrant I'll do it Canadian, climb out large snow pile. That's always a hazard in Canada that they get buried in snow. Some of you in the States do appreciate that as well. But we'll just show you how fast this happens. It gives me, 4 quick images that, again, if it's just a complimentary image, no problem. But can definitely reinforce your social media content or anything like that, advertising wise. And I just can't see the next one. Oh, that's fine. So hopefully that gives you guys some creative ideas on how you might be looking and using AI and create that, get those wheels running in your head on some of the utilities. But I'm happy to showcase anything else or answer any questions or share any more on what I can. But for the most part, I've shared hopefully quite a bit with you.
All right. Well, thank you, Shawn. And I know we're right at the noon hour here on Eastern time. So depending on your schedules, anybody that, Shawn, do you have a few minutes to hang on for questions?
Absolutely. I've got about 30 minutes before I get hauled away.
Okay. So with that, if there's anybody who has any questions, observations, or perspectives, and you would like to share them or ask Shawn, please just come on mic and say, Shawn, I have a question.
Long time listener, first time caller. Nobody on my team can ask any tough questions though, right?
Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, this recording will be made available afterwards, so that if there's a point you want to revisit or share with your team, you'll be able to do that. Shawn, I know you've been using this a lot. Could you just take a minute to talk about how you're using it for curriculum development?
Absolutely. So, I would say the other day I was actually just driving in the car, and we know we have our fire service instructor level 1, level 2 program here at the college, and we've been thinking of how do we make that program better. At least from my perspective, how do I make that program better? How are we producing better people in that program? So I explained that some of those struggles we had with the program, or at least the struggles I observed with the program, and how we want to kind of raise the bar, and had a whole conversation with AI about here's the NFPA standard, here's what we need to be achieved, but how do we build a better course, a more meaningful course, and especially in an e-learning type blend, half online, half in person, and all this. And so you had a big, long conversation with it, and then essentially had the ChatGPT come up with 6 courses that could be introduced as a micro-credential concept, and then starting to build out those courses and saying, okay, now that for this course, what's all going to be involved in that course? Give me all the modules, lay out the modules, let's build a course outline for it, and then show me how it's correlated back to the standard, like what JPRs and what knowledge pieces are going to be included in that course versus the next course versus the next course, and build me that kind of correlation sheet that we can give back to the authority having jurisdiction here, so we can make sure that they recognize that course and that the curriculum of that course is meet and exceed the NFPA standard, but making sure we're also in line with that. And it was like, yeah, dove in and had a lot of that, gave it that background, gave it all the extra content, and it was able to craft pretty much the entire curriculum map and all the course objectives and those correlation sheets just through that conversation. And then the next step is, now that I've got it, is sitting down with my team and saying, hey, here's my next pitch on where we should go with the instructor course. And let's pick this apart, fix it. Or maybe at the end, everybody's like, this is great. Let's get rolling. But I can do a lot of that for you. And again, that was all conversation, even into the evenings as we're sitting watching the Oilers hopefully beat Dallas tonight, if anybody's on from Texas. But I'll probably be having conversations with it while we're watching the game, kind of thing, and building out on that sort of stuff. I find it quite addicting, but really great that way. And like you said, same with our degree program. We'll bring up a course, give it the material we have for the course right now. It's like, hey, how do we just improve this? How do we make it better? Maybe refresh the objectives. It'll give you all that, or even if you give it an idea, let's talk about this concept, and then maybe we'll figure out how that fits somewhere else. I hope that kind of answers that, Ken.
Yeah, and Shawn, just to follow up, you mentioned NFPA standards, JPRs, accreditation sheets, correlation sheets. Those are things that we're familiar with because it's our trade. But when you're using ChatGPT or any of those, how familiar were they with that information, and is it at a level of relevancy and currency that it's spot on to your request and it's the current edition that's being referenced? And the other follow-up is, were you using an off-the-shelf ChatGPT or one that you're paying for that had higher search capabilities to get to those that information?
Absolutely. So we definitely are using the full version, like we're paying for it. Actually, it was funny. Mariette and Anita are on the call the other day. My visa got compromised on Friday, and we got the renew requirement for ChatGPT on Monday. And it was really funny. Mariette and Anita messaged me right away with like alarm bells and panic. We're gonna get canceled because they were getting notifications that our subscription was expiring. So it was like, no, we can't lose access to this. We got to get this paid. Like, panic, panic. It was kind of funny. It was quite good, but it told me that they found it very, very valuable. When it comes to those accessing those, say, correlation sheets or NFPA, a lot of times I've run into the block where it'll know the concept of the NFPA requirement, but ultimately it usually has to have like a password access to get into the real documentation. I guess there is the public facing versions, but it will tell you again, it is familiar with copywritten material and how it can use copywritten material. So you just have to be mindful, I guess, on how you're using it. But when I'm going to have that conversation with ChatGPT about a specific standard in content creation or a course creation, I'm going to take that, be honest, I'm going on to NFPA link. I'm cutting and pasting out either the section I want it to address or that chapter, putting it into a Word document and giving it directly to ChatGPT to say, you need to reference this in this conversation, or we need to build a course that hits everything here. Let's have a conversation about that kind of thing, and then we head off down that road. So I'm forcing it exactly the reference material I want it to focus on, so you don't get that either some of that scope creep or grabbing something that might not be exactly relevant. I did have that happen with a recent course that I was talking to it about. It was looking at a previous edition of the NFPA standard, where I'm going, whoa, 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 something went wrong here. You need to be looking at this document instead. So we were able to quickly correct the course, but you're exactly right there, Ken, is it went back to a previous edition and was using material from that to help shape it. Fortunately, I was able to catch it before we went too deep, but I uploaded just, I need you to just focus on this document right now, kind of thing.
All right. Any other questions for Shawn?
I just had a comment. I'm overwhelmed and so impressed by the capabilities that this AI has. I was aware of using it for writing, but I had no idea it could lend itself to graphics and video, and I think it'll be a real game changer, particularly for the communications field, because we don't get a big, slice of the budget, and I think it'll help us to improve our the look and feel of our communications. So I can't wait to check it out further.
On ChatGPT side, like we said, we just renewed yesterday because our license was going to be up tomorrow. We're paying it's $25 a month for every seat that we have because we have a workspace membership. So we all stay. We don't have the ability to cross over or talk to each other through ChatGPT, but it's just a better way to manage the team access to ChatGPT. So it's $25 a month per seat. So we got an invoice. It'll be a little, I'm talking Canadian dollars. So you guys do pay 30% less with the exchange kind of thing. But it was $2,800 for the year for my 9 people on my team to have access to ChatGPT. We have 9 seats. And I would, probably in a week's worth of time for me, I've already paid for it. Like I've paid for that for sure. We probably paid for that 100 times over and all what we've been able to do in the last year with that. So it's, I think you'll see the benefit when you start to employ it that way. What I do like about Well Said Labs is they actually have a tracker on there. And based on the work you've asked it to do, it gives you that number. In a traditional fashion of voiceovers, you've already spent $4,500. And I think it was $250 for access to that tool, kind of thing. And going, all right, cool. This is well paid for itself as well.
Yeah, really impressive. And thank you for sharing all your knowledge with us.
Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate that.
And Shawn, could I ask if you could just type your contact information perhaps into the chat? So if folks want to follow up, they can reach out and contact you directly. And with that, I would like to thank everybody for joining us this morning into the afternoon on Eastern Time for our discussion on AI. Certainly, as Shawn said, this is a evolving topic. Just since we had a presentation in April at FDIC, things have changed. Products have come out, enhancements have been made available. So it's going to require that we stay on top of it, and we'll continue to work with our communications work group and to bring these Zoom meetings available to share the good word and help us all do our job better. So let's see. I just want to be sure what we have in the chat here. Yep, we got Shawn's cell is in the chat. So anybody that wants to grab that before we sign off, please do. He's available. And Shawn, once again, thanks so much. Everyone else, thanks for joining in. And we'll let you know when we're going to do a follow-up on this. So until then, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.